Hello everyone, this is Xunhui. Today I will represent the other members of our research group to report our work. Many people are complaining about the lack of money while creating and maintaining open source software. Therefore, there have been many platforms that support open source projects and open source developers. As the world's largest open source development platform, GitHub launched the sponsor mechanism in May 2019. This article wants to take the sponsor mechanism as an example to explore whether the donation can solve the above-mentioned problem. For the analysis of the sponsor mechanism, we applied a four-dimension study, including why do developers participate or not in the sponsor mechanism, how effective is sponsorship in motivating activity, who is likely to receive more sponsorship, and what are the shortcomings. We used the mixed method by qualitatively survey the developers on GitHub and quantitatively verify the results based on the related personal information and activities on GitHub. There are three kinds of users, namely maintainers, sponsors, and non-maintainers. We use the GitHub API to collect all the users, their characteristics, and open source software activities. We designed three questionnaires for three types of users respectively and obtained the results of our qualitative analysis through 2 rounds of questionnaire surveys. Regarding to the reasons for participating or not, for both sponsors and maintainers, they treat the sponsor mechanism as a way to express thanks for using software and hope that sponsorship can become the driving force for developers to make contributions continuously. There are many personal reasons for developers who do not participate in the sponsor mechanism, including their requirements, motivation, and self-disapproval. Regarding to the effectiveness of the sponsor mechanism, we first calculated the changes in the number of developers' commits and discussions over time and found a trend of rising first and then falling. We then fitted the trend of developer activities over time before and after treatment through a regression model-based interrupt time theories analysis to confirm whether the treatment had a significant effect and the magnitude and direction. Here we choose 2 treatments, that is, the time users created sponsor accounts and the time they were sponsored for the first time. To better reflect the magnitude of the treatment effect, we selected other developer characteristics and activities as control variables. And from the results, we can see that, although the influence of treatments are significant, however, comparing to the associated history activities, the effect set is relatively small. Also, we can see that after the intervention, the growth trend of developers' activities becomes negative. But we can see that the development activity in the 15 days before and after being sponsored is more active than other periods. We therefore wanted to explore the short-term effects of sponsorship on maintainers. Here is the Wilcoxon pair test. We counted each developer's commit and discussion activities before and after being sponsored for 15 days. We then compared all the developers to see if there was a significant increase or decrease in development activity 15 days before and after treatment. It can be seen from the results that only the commit behavior had a significant increased trend after each sponsorship. However, the effect size is negligible. We want to explore what causes sponsorship to be unable to increase developers' activity effectively. We asked maintainers and sponsors 3 questions. For sponsors, 53.7% think that the sponsorship meets their expectations, that is, expressed their thanks to the maintainers. For maintainers, although 50.4% think that sponsorship can motivate them a lot or to a great deal, only 20.7% are satisfied with the amount of income. In summary, we draw the following conclusions. In terms of short-term effects, the sponsor mechanism makes a slightly positive contribution to the development activity, but has no significant impact on discussion activity. However, this impact is not sustained. One possible reason is that the actual amount of support does not meet maintainers' expectations, which makes it difficult for maintainers to rely on sponsorship income to keep investing in open source contributions. Regarding the third research question, we first asked the maintainers how they think they can get more sponsorship and the sponsors about what kind of developer they prefer to sponsor. We can find from the result that participants think producing useful projects and actively making contributions leads to more sponsorship. To validate participants' subjective perceptions, we analyze the impact of factors on maintainers' harvest of sponsorships through hurdle regression. We collected 20 metrics across 5 dimensions, including developer basic information, social sponsor mechanism, activity, and project characteristics. From the results, we found that compared with historical commit activity and discussion activity, the social status of developers in the community had the greatest impact on whether to obtain sponsorships and the number of sponsorships. Therefore, we conclude that most maintainers and sponsors think that sponsorship builds on relationships forged through using open source software. Active and meaningful participation in open source contributions can also help maintainers gain more attention. However, the qualitative analysis reveals that the social popularity of the maintainer in the community is the decisive factor in obtaining more sponsorships. For RQ4, we asked the participants about the shortcomings of the sponsor mechanism and found 3 kinds of shortcomings. First, usage deficiency. For example, difficult to find maintainers. Second, object orientation with supportive functions. For example, there's a need for better support for cooperative sponsorship. Third, personalization. There's a need to reflect variation in participant types. All in all, it is necessary for system designers to consider regional support and then make the sponsor mechanism accessible and better for more people who want to participate by improving the user experience. For system designers, it is important to consider how to design conjunctive mechanisms such as adding a ranking list according to the number of received or given sponsorships in the annual report. Therefore, the sponsor mechanism can become a more continuous driving force of developer open source software activities. As for sponsorship towards projects, we think it is needed to consider the percentage of contributors' contributions to achieve greater equity. As for the sponsor mechanism, it is essential to increase one's community visibility through advertising. The passivity, uncertainty, and instability inherent from donations make it difficult for maintainers to rely on them and continuously make open source software contributions. At the same time, the lack of reasonable evaluations of contributions and funding allocation makes it difficult for sponsors to determine whom to sponsor and by how much. Thanks for your listening.